Welcome to the very first episode of Shift Happens, Fiverr's new series diving into how AI is reshaping the freelance work, business, and creativity. I'm Aaron Gold. I lead programming and tech at Fiverr, and I'm actually a freelancer myself, and I'll be our host today. This series is about helping you stay ahead of the shift, not just reacting to it. And today, we're kicking things off with one of the biggest trends in tech, vibe coding. To kick things off, we're bringing in someone who's been at the center of this shift, Harper Carroll. Harper's been building AI systems for over a decade, from Meta to a GPU startup that recently got acquired by NVIDIA. And now she's helping teach the next generation of builders. Awesome. So we're lucky to have Harper.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. So happy to talk with you all today about vibe coding. Yeah, this transition towards vibe coding is one of the most exciting developments that we've seen with AI. It's actually been one of the biggest shifts that we've seen societally today with the advent of AI, specifically large language models. So I'm so excited to talk with you today and to be working with Fiverr, because Fiverr has been so thoughtful about the way that they've implemented AI into their platform and the way that they are helping creators use AI already. And so I just love to see that they're starting this web series, this community event series, to kind of guide you all towards vibe coding, because this is something that I know will be able to empower everyone, especially non-technical creators who are used to starting somewhere with their idea and then kind of needing to outsource the actual engineering part of it. So we'll get to that anyway. But I am Harper. I, as Aaron said, have been a machine learning engineer for about a decade. And I have my undergraduate and master's degrees in computer science and engineering, specializing in artificial intelligence from Stanford. And then I was at Meta working on building machine learning systems there for about 4 years. And then I left and was a founding engineer with the two founders at a GPU development environment startup. GPUs are the machines that they use to train AI models. And when I was there, I started teaching AI online, basically coding guides on how to fine-tune AI models. And those guides were very helpful, and that kind of began my public education series. I always have loved teaching. I started teaching when I was at Stanford. I was teaching PhD level courses and for computer science and for artificial intelligence. And also in high school, I loved to teach as well. I ran the tutoring club and tutored people of all ages. So yeah, I'm just so happy to be doing this. I love to kind of share exciting knowledge with people and help them understand it. So I'm so happy to be here talking about vibe coding. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so vibe coding. Rick Rubin is a brilliant music producer, and he has helped work with some of the greatest musicians of our day, and he works purely through vibes himself. And he has likened vibe coding to the advent of punk rock. So let's quickly watch what he says about it, because I think it's really fascinating. And when I watched this video from Rick Rubin on vibe coding, I understood what it was. So let's take a quick watch.
So in the past, for music, you had to go to the conservatory and study for years and years, and then someday you could play in a symphony. And then when punk rock came along, you could maybe learn 3 chords in a day. And then there were all these bands, and that made it everybody. And that was how I started in music, was punk rock. If you had something to say, you could say it. You didn't need the expertise or skill set other than your idea and your ability to convey it. And vibe coding is the same thing. It's the punk rock of coding. I think the biggest disconnect that I feel myself is that it's such a strong tool that can do so much. We need some examples of some of the different things it can do. Now we'll see it can make it can make animation that looks like your favorite cartoon. And then you see a million people doing that. But
Yeah.
that's one idea. I want to see all of the things it could do to understand what's possible.
So you get the idea now of what vibe coding is. Basically, historically, you've had to have a background in computer science and engineering and coding, go to school for years, self-teach for years. And now if you just have an idea, you can speak it in natural language, in English, into a large language model or a chatbot. Large language models are the technical term for the chatbots that you use, and it will create this program for you that you can then help develop. And at the end, he's saying there that he wishes that there were more examples of how to use AI. And it's true. We're still at the very beginning of using this tool. And it is said that AI is very much like electricity in that it will underlie every single system. And when we first started having electrical appliances, they took about 40 years to get right and for people to think of different ways that we could use electricity. Like the laundry machine was one of the early ones that actually, was very hard to get right. It took a while for us to have on-off switches. The full spectrum of what we could do with electricity, with electrical appliances took time. So again, using these tools now, you are a pioneer of these tools. And it can be hard to imagine what you've never seen before, but as creators, as freelancers, you live in your creativity. So you can really just imagine anything and work with these tools to build it. So, so we have this creative work. Can we actually go back to the last slide really quickly? So it's democratizing this development. It's now easier than ever for anyone to develop. And there will be this new era of the solopreneur where individuals will be able to eventually potentially run billion-dollar companies. And so, as I said before, as a freelancer or a creative, you might have to, build the full creative part and then work with an engineer, and you may never get exactly what it is that you've imagined. But now you can have the full spectrum end to end. And actually the creative skill, the skill of envisioning what it is you're trying to create with beauty, with art, that is what is unique here. And I know it is said that, is AI going to replace artists? I actually don't believe that at all. I think the creativity part, the art part, the vision part, that is what is so sacred. And then now being able to transform it into an actual working product is easier than ever. And you'll be able to create it into what it is you truly see. So, all right, now we can move on. So it's reshaping work. Now, again, as we said, we have this creative work. You can work with these vibe coding tools to develop an actual product, because what these vibe coding tools do is, as I said, you can speak to it. It writes code for you. It shows you what that code looks like. And then you can iterate. You can say, hey, I want to move, the search bar over to the right, or I want to change the color here. I want to include this logo. And, I want to add comment boxes. And you can work iteratively with your own language. And again, it's something where you can get better at it. It's going to take time. There is, a little bit of a learning curve here, but this is such a valuable skill because once you master it, you truly own the full process end to end, from creation, ideation to actual execution and deployment. And so then you become this entrepreneur. We have this solopreneurship. So it empowers individuals and organizations to achieve unprecedented levels of efficiency and innovation. And as I said, it's democratizing access to these powerful capabilities once reserved for large corporations, because before you would have to have full teams working on these products. And now, as I said, and as I keep saying, the individual and perhaps a small team can really work to create something that is truly theirs with these tools. So many more people will be able to bring their dreams and their curiosities to life and focus on what really inspires them and just create art from end to end. So it's very exciting. Moving on. So we have a few vibe coding tools that are available on the market now, and we'll continue to see more. There's different options Replit is a great one. It was kind of an early vibe coding tool where you can, as I said, go in, type in what you want, and then it will create full apps for you, and you can work with it on their site. Lovable is what we'll be exploring today. I hear great things about Lovable. It's slightly more user-friendly for those with less of a technical coding background, so it's a great one to start with. And then Cursor is actually for those who do have some bit of coding background, and it helps you. But if you're new to coding, you can use it as well because it writes code for you, and you can ask questions about the code and ask questions in English. So if you are interested in learning to code, Cursor is a good application for you to use because it will write code, it will explain it, and then you can iterate together with this app. But it is more, the code is more front-facing than with Lovable and with Replit. And Bolt is another one that I've heard about, kind of similar to Lovable and Replit, maybe somewhere in the middle, really good for prototyping. But yeah, I hear Lovable is really, really excellent for those who are less technical and really want to deploy, as in like ship a product end to end from their idea to the final product that is front facing. So I am so excited, with that said, that we get to learn about Lovable today. Erin, really excited to hear you walk through it and to see the demo. So thank you all again for having me, and I'll pass it over to Erin so that we can see Lovable in action and learn how to use it.
Amazing. So before we dive into Lovable, I wanted to kind of take a step back and talk what Harper was just kind of talking about. So the first thing there is, what exactly kind of like is Lovable, Replit, Cursor you've heard about? I'm sure many of you have used Cursor or ChatGPT, for example, right? You go, you type, what you want, you get English back or whatever language you're in. Or you could say, hey, give me some Python code, it will give me the code back. And traditionally, what I have done, at least personally as a seller, and I could talk about those experiences if anyone has any questions. But I started off by going to ChatGPT and saying like, hey, give me some code for this. And what Lovable or Replit or Bolt does is they kind of take it the next step forward. So they actually will build your entire component library and build probably most of what you're actually working on, and then deploy it for you. So instead of taking a piece of code and giving you a file back, they might give you 20 files or 50 files. And so what's really powerful here is, if you think about maybe you as a seller or as a freelancer, so much of what you spend your time on is in the code. It's not in the ideation phase. People come to you typically with an idea and with requirements, and they're looking for you to kind of build it. Right. And so vibe coding, we're still going to be in that focus. Just freelancers still front and center. But, there's an important role that kind of you as a, freelancer is going to play. And what's important here is that with vibe coding, we're seeing the democratization of building. And so historically, I would think, and we'd laugh, we talked about it, with my colleagues today, in the sense where you used to have an idea, maybe you're hanging around the bar, grabbing a drink, going to dinner with your friends. And you'd have this idea, and then in the back of your mind, it would be there a month later or 2 months later, or 6 months later. And unfortunately, it was hard to build things, right? It's costly, it's difficult, it takes time. And even more so, even building MVPs, what get you excited, which might get you funding, might help you kind of sell your story, was just as hard. And so what we've seen here is really the democratization of who can build. So what we're seeing on Fiverr, as we analyze, what it looks like from a kind of vibe coding perspective, we're seeing a ton of different personas. First, we're seeing builders and creators, people that always had an idea and are now looking to build it. We're seeing solo founders who, have an idea and want to launch a business and are able to do that by themselves or with one other person, thanks to these vibe coding AI and LLM tools. We're seeing marketers who are now taking, new ideas or taking their marketing initiatives to the next level with landing pages or new experiences. But at the end of the day, what's really important here is that everyone is going to be using these. And that's not to say that they're replacing you, right? They're not replacing me. They're not replacing you. We've heard a lot about scary things. If you think back to a Fiverr campaign, no one cares how you use AI if you use AI. And the truth here is we're going to see people who, are trying to launch fast, maybe sometimes within hours. They're sharing prototypes, MVPs or demos, and that they're not going and writing these giant product specs of requirements. They're going to Lovable or Bolt or Cursor, and they're just writing what they want. And suddenly, in front of them, they're seeing a website. And that's exciting. It even honestly gets people, I found, to have more buy-in on their products and then come to Fiverr so that we can actually perfect them. And so instead of writing these large product specs, instead of having these hurdles, which many times meant that you didn't actually build the product that you wanted to build or make your idea come to fruition, you're logging into Lovable, you're giving your ideas, and you're building it in front of you. And so what I found, and if we go to the next slide, we're seeing a kind of transition of what people are building. I'll talk about it in a minute, but what I would just address is that we're seeing significant growth in these areas. Actually, before we go to this slide, do you mind going to the next slide real fast? I think it'll just be helpful. Thank you. So you might be thinking after that conversation I just had, or that comment around, where do we play a role in this process? And so what's really important is I like to think of vibe coding as giving that person who's always had an idea of what to build the tools to make it come alive. But there's a huge difference between make it come alive and make it shippable, right? They're able to take their idea and turn it into an incredible MVP. And that's amazing, right? It means that they can go to their friends and tell them about it. It means they can get maybe their first 10 customers, their first 100 customers, their first 1,000 customers. It proves a market demand. It might prove market fit. And it's just exciting. Like, you just smile when you build things, and you could build it fast. On the other hand, frequently I find, and this is from my own experience and not others, is that they don't get you across the finish line, right? The code maybe is not as componentized as we would like. Maybe it doesn't integrate specific APIs that we have. It might suddenly trip up and delete things that I had previously. Like, I have a friend, a colleague that was just working on something. He built something. Soon later, he added other features, and a little bit longer, things broke. And so what we see as we look at these trends, we look at what people are ordering, and we plan ahead, we see a really big opportunity for you as our freelancers. You can go back, sorry. You can stay on the last slide. I'll talk about the next one later. For you as freelancers to really focus on offering those skills that will take a vibe coding project from what someone did as an idea, where it got them to a link to send to their parents, to send to their family members, to a finished product. So that could be integrating SSO. Maybe a company comes to you and they want Google SSO. Maybe they want Okta SSO. Maybe they want their own SSO or authentication. It could be implementing any API, 100% a private API, right? If you're as a company, you have your own APIs. LLMs do not do as well with those. They don't have as much information. It could be payment flows. It could be custom features. It could be security assessments. It could be changing the design. It even could be deploying the application. And so to take it back from a technical standpoint, many of these products are basically building React apps. They're building React with Tailwind and Shad CDN, and they're building incredible full stack apps. But at the end of the day, they still are, React apps. So if you are a React developer, this is your skill set, your bread and butter. And what we're hoping here is to increase the demand of buyers coming to you guys who are saying, hey, I built the first version of my product, my idea. Can you make it successful? Can you improve the features? Can you improve the design? Can you integrate everything that I have that's not possible? And can you do the 50 bug fixes that are not happening? And then we're also going to have corporate sellers and other individuals who are going to say, hey, I need this behind my VPN. I want this access on my Azure instance or my AWS instance. And that's a great place for Fiverr and you as sellers to kind of play. And so if we flip back a slide, What you'll see here are significant growths, and I'll walk you through kind of where we're seeing those when it comes to the demand of things like Lovable, Bolt, Cursor, etc. And so if you just look at the sheer orders, what you're seeing is we've had a significant spike starting in February of 2025. So that line is relatively flat, right, until 2025. And then we see huge growth. And so we're seeing buyers start to use these tools and start to look for individuals who can kind of provide this expertise. Next, if you kind of look at the breakdown, we're seeing this across all areas. Some of them might be what you would expect, like AI development or software development or website development, but you're seeing them across the board, right? We're also even seeing it in databases as people want to integrate their own data platforms into their Lovable or Bolt applications. And of course, that large one, the one all the way on the top, the green one, is software development. That's where our bulk of our gigs around full stack development lives. And as mentioned, Lovable, Bolt, Lovable, Bolt, VO, etc., are more or less React apps with Tailwind kind of built in. And then just to comment on this one, just so don't worry, that little drop right there is just as we're part of the month. We continue to expect significant growth over the next few months and years as these products hit more mainstream. And then finally, just mentioning FTBs, you'll see, there is a larger segment that is coming from new sellers. We hope that this is the kind of the entry point for your work, not just to maybe do a bug fix, which might be the initial scope, but to take their bug fix and then do their integration with an API, then do their SSO, maybe do notifications, maybe do emails, etc. And so this is just the start. We're seeing large increases. If you flip back to the next page slide, I'll just kind of hammer in that vibe coding is like the ChatGPT of coding. It's the idea that you can go and you can start, typing and build a product. And that's so exciting. But if you want components or features or support that isn't there, that's where, it's going to just be where you guys thrive. And if that is adding the support for automated emails with a send grid, if that's text message with Twilio, if that's payment flows, etc., vibe coding gets you the first part. You guys are going to get them to be successful. And so as you can kind of see in this quote, someone came to us with a brief that says, fix what AI started and make it more polished. Add integration to my custom APIs and fix the remaining bugs. And that was part of their brief. I think it sums it up really well. They're looking for some customization in addition to some bug fixes. Cool. Should we hop over to the next slide? Cool. So what does that mean from a catalog perspective at Fiverr? So we have some exciting news. If you haven't seen in the past few weeks, we launched a new vibe coding kind of subcategory within programming and tech. That includes 4 new areas focused on what I was just discussing. The first one is development and MVP. So this is focused on individuals who are coming and hoping that, we'll build their entire MVP with them. As kind of we talked about, vibe coding, Lovable, Bolt, etc., are all incredible accelerators to leverage. And I'm sure many of you have used, code from ChatGPT or Cursor. And so these are individuals who are looking for a similar fidelity, their entire product built on vibe coding, and understand that, maybe that accelerates your work. So maybe they can get more functionality for cheaper, or you can maybe do something in a shorter amount of time for that MVP versus it would have taken you weeks beforehand. Next, we have our troubleshooting and improvements. So this section of our catalog is focused on everything we talked about on the previous slide. So, if you want to integrate a send grid, a Twilio, fix any bugs, improve the design, integrate custom APIs, SSO, payments, you name it. This is where I imagine the bulk of our kind of demand will come from buyers. And once again, if you are a React developer, if you're Tailwind, Shad CDN, which is many of these are built on, if you're a database expert, if you're a DevOps expert, even if you're a designer or an SEO expert, you have an opportunity, and I know you will thrive in this area. Because as we started this presentation, we made it very clear, and I see it every day looking at the data, is that people love to build. Me, myself, as I said, I was in a bar with friends, and suddenly I took out my laptop and I started building a mobile app by vibe coding. And the next thing you know is we're going to see an influx of individuals who are taking those ideas and are saying, hey, how do I bring it to life? How do I make it successful? How do I do marketing, et cetera? And so we've opened these 4 nesteds accordingly. Also, we have DevOps. So as mentioned, people want to take this code, they're going to want to put it on AWS, maybe on Azure, behind any of their areas, maybe integrate Sentry for, API call monitoring, you name it. This is also a great area. And then lastly, we have consultation and training. And so, if someone is looking how to be a better engineer, a better prompter to learn Lovable, this is your place to shine. If you want to have a 30-minute call or 60-minute call and walk someone through the pros and cons of Lovable versus Bolt versus custom build, or how do I architecturally do this correctly, or what is the best way to prompt engineer this so that it can be componentized, as you all, as experts and freelancers, become more comfortable with the platform, I definitely encourage all of you to open gigs within consultation and training, and of course within the other 3 nesteds that we have here. And so, I think we've talked all about what is vibe coding, what is the impact, what we're seeing with Fiverr, if that's metrics, if that's personas. And now we're really excited to kind of hand off and bring in an incredible company. You may have heard of them recently, but we're handing it off to one of the leading platforms called Lovable. So, Lovable lets anyone build a full stack application, just as you're describing it in English. It's like prompting, but prompting to product instead of prompting to an essay. And, as you kind of know, we're a place to really take those prompts and that product they build and bring it next level. So Sebastian Chef is here from Lovable and is here to walk us through what we're seeing and show us a live build. As part of that live build, I believe we'll be doing a poll to see what we should be building, but we're super grateful to have Sebastian and Christian from his team here, and we're super excited. So thanks, guys.
Amazing. Great to have you all here. Thanks for having us, and obviously super happy to speak to you. I'll just kick us off with a mini intro and to give some context. And then we would love to spend the bulk of the time to just, build something together. And I'm happy to get any questions from the audience here while we're building for, anything that you've been wondering, like from trying the platform, from just seeing it live, and happy to address this on at the same time. But to give a mini intro here, like who are we and what are we doing at Lovable? I'm Sebastian. I'm working closely with our founder on growth and product topics, and Christian leads product at Lovable. And we've both been there when Lovable was only, how many were we? Christian, when you joined, I think you were number 4 or 5. I think I was number 8 in the team. So we were a small group of people building in the basement, basically. That's not entirely true, but in one room in a co-working space. And now, obviously, that looks very, very different. And we've been super thankful to get so much love and appreciation from our users. And we've grown very fast. I don't know whether anyone can see my screen because I don't see it being shared. Yeah, okay, there it is. So just to give a quick intro on what are we doing with at Lovable. And Lovable was built on the premise that software and being able to code is kind of the most important skill of our time. Yet more than 99%, I think it's 99.6% of the world's population cannot read and write code. So I don't know how many, what share of the people here in this room are developers, but if you are in the clear minority. And at the same time, we see that there's so many people who have great ideas, and they're either intimately familiar with a problem, or because they experience it, they hear it from their users, they know exactly how a solution should look like, and they just can't build it by themselves. And this is what Lovable set out to solve. And we basically want to build the last piece of software, meaning a product platform that changes the game in how software is being built, operated, maintained, etc., and by everyone. So we want to democratize access to coding knowledge, and on the one hand side, empower everyone who's not a developer. But I mean, we have lots of designers, we have product managers using Lovable because they know what a good product looks like. And like they're normally just dependent on a developer, and they now can build it themselves. But we also see a lot of developers using the tool because, I mean, as a developer, you spend so much time doing smaller details. You do scaffolding, and Lovable enables you to breeze through this so that you can spend your brain cycles and the majority of your time on the tough problems, the creative problems, the strategic problems. So we see a lot of solo builders using Lovable, and we see a lot of agencies starting to use Lovable to build for clients. I think we have like the first no-code agency that switched to Lovable was Cream.digital, quite vocal on social media. And they originally used Bubble and shifted to Lovable. I think they make like $250,000 per month and doubled their revenue within a month of shifting because they could ship so much faster. And there's lots of these stories. And then we also see more and more enterprises that start using Lovable for their teams and have it even like to build internal tools. And very often they also need some help and some guidance for skilled experts like yourselves to help either the solo builders that want to overcome a problem because they don't experience with code and they have something that they just can't crack. And sometimes AI gets stuck and they need help, or they need help to have their security review to make sure that everything is polished and ready to go, or they might need some help with design and like finishing the product or getting their first users and marketing. And the same thing for enterprise customers that just need some help to do integration work to overcome an issue, etc. That's for the intro that I wanted to make. But I think the most fun part about Lovable is to actually show it live in building. So I'd love to hand over to you, Christian, to showcase in a very short amount of time how Lovable works. And yeah, any questions that you have on the side, please just throw them through the chat, and we'll tackle them. I think there was a poll that was run. Christian, did you have a concrete idea for what you want to build?
I'm happy to roll with the punches and go with the poll. Let's do it.
Cool.
It's
there
risky.
was the poll. I think the most voted for version was an AI powered personal budgeting app, which I think is a very simple use case. So good to demo and illustrate. Okay. No, there was another app that was now voted up. There was an instant freelance portfolio generator. I admit I'm not sure exactly like what that means. So Christian, I'll let you decide whether you go for the AI-powered personal budgeting app, or whether you want to interpret instant freelance portfolio generator.
All right, let's do it. I think, Sebastian, you have the easy job here. You just hype up Lovable and then you pass it on to me to actually follow up, and we'll see. I need to share my screen. Yeah, thank you. Okay, perfect. All right, let's get started. So I'm gonna go for the one that got the most votes, which was the freelance portfolio generator. So what is this? This is basically, I'm assuming it's.
You want a full screen, Christian?
Sorry?
You want a full screen, your window?
Yeah. Am I full screen now?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So my understanding here, without knowing what people had in mind when they voted, is that we want some sort of website that enables users to at least prompt and get the content of a portfolio. Making a generator like Lovable, but for designers, is going to be a bit harder. So maybe what I'll focus on is just creating an outline of the content that you would then maybe add to your website, and maybe taking a shortcut here. But I think that will be a fair use case. Cool. But this is where it all starts. The journey starts at lovable.dev. You see this big text prompt, and that's where you will basically paste your prompt. I'm just going to complete, kind of fill in the gaps here. So, and on a freelance portfolio generator, only create the landing page for now. So I'm going to start by just creating the first thing that my future customers are going to see, which is the entry point of my application, in this case, the landing page. and I'm going to let Lovable scaffold that up, create the sort of the boilerplate and a first version of this initial site. While this works, I can maybe speak a little bit about some stuff we've been shipping recently. So we just shipped the Lovable agent, which is essentially the engine of Lovable. It's the entity you're having a conversation with in the chat. And what this brings to the table is that Lovable should just feel much more smarter. It should feel like you're working with like a real developer. You'll see it will think, it will put up a plan, and then it will start taking actions. And this is a transition from the previous version of Lovable, which was much more hard-coded. It felt dumber because it would really follow a recipe and wouldn't have the ability to change and adapt its plan as it learned and got more feedback. And what's also very nice about this Lovable agent is that it has access to new capabilities like generating images, like we see just did here. It can also search on the web if it's missing information, documentation, and it can work for much longer, ambitious tasks, which means that you can prompt less and get more work done, basically. So this is essentially what's happening. While that runs, maybe I can kind of speak a little bit about the things I'm seeing in my screen here. So Lovable is primarily a chat-driven development tool. So you should have a conversation and build mostly by just having by having a dialogue, basically. However, if you want to look into the code, you can always open the editor here, which will load all the code files that are being created by the agent. And we also have a GitHub integration. And this is useful for those that maybe have some developer knowledge and they want to kind of jump in and take over. Or perhaps you have a developer that is working on the side and you want to invite him and see exactly what Lovable is sort of generating in the background. So our GitHub integration is very popular for those two use cases. You can invite people very easily by just adding their email. And you can also connect to Superbase. And Superbase, think of Superbase as it's a different company. They build databases and backends as a service. And it's sort of a power couple that you can use together with Lovable to build much more complex apps. And I'm going to show you that a bit later, further down the line. Cool. So we have a first version of this landing page. Typically, when you're like quite broad with the first prompt, you'll get something that is pretty generic, but then you can like quickly iterate on this. And some examples, like a very fast way of iterating on this is using our visual edit tools. And that's think of it as a faster way of making super precise edits where AI is going to just be much slower. So I can show you how that looks. So you can open it by clicking on this edit tool and say, for example, you want to, for example, I don't know, from idea to live site, you can sort of like edit these things and directly edit text. You can also remove entire divs or elements in the page. And you do this, and this will take a couple seconds versus having to kind of write the prompt, press enter. So that's showcasing edits. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add authentication here before I show you the AI generation capabilities that Superbase unlocks. So in order to add authentication and anything related to databases, I need to connect it to a Superbase project. And you can create a Superbase project by going to superbase.com, and they have a pretty generous free tier, which enables 2 free projects. And once you have that Superbase account, you can then connect it to an empty project, which is essentially a backend that is ready to be configured and developed further by Lovable. And the beauty of this is that if you go to Superbase, you'll see a bunch of options. They have like authentication, they have a database tab, they have storage tab for files and pictures, but you mostly don't have to interact too much with this UI because you will be doing everything through the Lovable agent. And the Lovable agent does a great job at sort of orchestrating and creating everything you need in the background for you. Cool. So now it tells me that my app is now connected to Superbase. So I'm just going to tell it to add authentication and redirect auth users to a portfolio generation UI interface. And then what I want that to look like is I want, so users should have a text area to describe their skill sets, and skill sets, and maybe I'll just, I'll stop there. Cool. All right, what else can we showcase? So while this works, I'll maybe show you a little bit about some of the settings you have at the project level. So you can connect Lovable to a custom domain. If you're getting to the point where you want to launch something, it's always nice to not have the Lovable default domain, but just make it yours by adding your own brand. So that's something we do very easily by just simply going through a very simple 3-step flow. You have analytics. Once you publish, now it's empty because I haven't published my project, but you can be able to see sessions, users, and how these sort of progress as time goes by. You also have a place to configure knowledge. So if there's certain guidelines that you want to make sure Lovable follows, then you can do that in that central knowledge repository, and Lovable will have that super top of mind as it builds out the new features. And stuff you want to include there is, for example, if there's some stylistic guidelines, if there's some important security concerns that you want to make sure that Lovable pays attention to. There's a lot of stuff, and it's pretty open-ended depending on what you try to accomplish. So I kind of flew through this. I just kind of did something here while I was talking. I can explain a little bit what's happening. So Lovable, like the way Lovable configures things in Superbase is often through SQL queries that you need to, as a user, approve. And you don't really necessarily need to understand everything that is happening here. You can if you want to, and it's not too complicated. But this is basically, in this example, it's creating a profiles table that will store my user name and my avatar, for example, if that was something I wanted to add. And I'm just saying that, yes, okay, go ahead, create that in Superbase. And that's the button I pressed. And here it's also trying to add some security. Some security improvements that I'm also going to approve, and I'm going to wait that. I'm going to let that run in the background. So
maybe, Christian, I saw there was a few discussions about this build. So a few discussions on security, which is obviously a super relevant topic, and one of the things that our users often need a lot of help with, because it's very difficult to understand exactly how to make software secure when you're not a developer. Even for a developer, it's obviously a big challenge. Otherwise, you wouldn't see like leaks from companies like Microsoft. And we've built in a feature to help our users with this. Maybe you can quickly touch up on this.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So vibe coding is extremely empowering, but vibe coding also means that there is a security risk, especially if you're not a developer, that is on top of all the particularities of what it means to build an app that is secure, that has sort of made sure that there's no unnecessary exposure to risks, and because of that, we have security super top of mind. And for now, we have a roadmap of security, and we'll be adding more features. But for now, one of the very nice things that Lovable supports is kind of running a security view. First of all, we sort of show you all the Superbase related warnings when it comes to security, and that could be like you created a table but you haven't protected it. That's the most common thing we see. But you can also run a general security review that will have the agent look at the entire application and come up with a plan for how to mitigate all the security risks. And I won't run that now, but this is something that you should definitely do, especially before publishing your app and making it public.
Yeah, and I think, Christian, just your comment about security and Sebastian about freelancers and developers. I see we have a question: what skills should developers focus on to stay valuable in a vibe coding workflow? And I'm going to talk fully from my own personal perspective as both like the vertical manager at Fiverr in this domain, but just as much as a PM and a developer. Like I've been there with our clients, and I think what's so exciting is a few things. One is everyone who wants to build and now wants to ship a product are coming to Fiverr, and that's going to increase the demand. And so from a kind of a skill perspective, I think it's also just being curious, like going to the Lovables of the world, going to the Superbases of the world and saying, okay, yeah, maybe I've used EC2 forever from a database perspective or like a serverless perspective. Now let me use like cloud functions on Firebase or go to Vercel or deploy in Netlify. And I think that's the most important thing here is like, genuinely, I've almost written an entire app in Flutter, having barely written any of the code, having understood the structure. And I think like that's the most important thing to think about, is like you're still experts. Like at the end of the day, like people are coming to you because they want to know it's getting built right. And I build things all the time, and we're not even talking about Lovable and Cursor, and I'll look at it and I'll say, wow, there's 12 components, and all 12 components do the same thing except for one difference in parameter. And you as experts are going to say, why don't we just use a dictionary or do this or do that, and we can like make our code a lot cleaner. And so I think what's important is understanding how to leverage these platforms and integrate them into your current workflows. And so as you as a freelancer, you can maybe do 5 times as many projects or 2 times as many projects a month, obviously have great revenues because of that, and then make some really great things. And so, if you're going to start with a brand new project, turn to Lovable and say, hey, why am I starting with a hello world from React or Python? Let's build a prototype. Let's get it in the hand of our buyers. Let's see what they think, and then go from there and continue customizing it and everything like that. So I think that's probably the most important thing. I don't know if Harper, Christian, or Sebastian, you have any thoughts there as well.
I mean, I think it's spot on, right? Like the way that we look at all of these tools, and I mean, even we use Lovable, we use Cursor and other tools. It's like, why would I not use something that enables me to be more productive, to be more efficient, and to do more in the same amount of time? I think, I mean, like we've just reported that we went from like 1 to 100 million in ARR in a few months, and with a team of 45. So like the only way that this is possible is that like what was previously taking 5 to 10 people now takes 1 person to finish, because everyone is so powered with AI tools. And I mean, we definitely don't see Lovable or any of these tools as a replacement for developers, for designers. We think we just have more people that will be creating really powerful things, even though I understand the anxiety around this sometimes. But what I am have high conviction about is that people who do not leverage these tools will have no chance to compete with all of those that pick them up right now, that learn them, and I mean, just get superpowers. And I mean, we see already, like, I mean, back in the day, it probably took a few people to build Snake for Nokia, on a Nokia phone. And like now, like this can be built within 1 minute by Lovable. And like this is just kind of the shift that we're seeing. And we're seeing we had a Brazilian company that, I mean, the leading Brazilian edtech company, and like they just had 3 people building out a new product. And they were just like, yeah, normally we build this with like 30 to 40 engineers. And now they just build it with 3 people, like within a few weeks, released it, got so much signups that they got, I think, $3 million in revenue in just 4 days after launching. So these are the types of things that we'll see where one person can just like build grander things faster than ever before, and have a big impact here.
Yeah, I think well said.
Sounds good. And I know there's another question around what are the best tool combinations for vibe coding for iOS and Android. I'm sure Lovable is working on one. I'm sure it'll be out one day. I know Bolt has one. I'll just talk from my own experience. So I built a few iOS and Android apps. I think there's a few things to talk about. One is, as a whole, it's a lot more complex than mobile, right? Even when you look at some of the vibe coding products, they're typically using things like Electron or JavaScript, compilers that are going to mobile apps. What I will also say is that if you're building in Flutter or in Xcode and Swift or anything like that, typically we're seeing more LLMs built into those. Like Swift now has Apple's LLM compiler, Flutter, Cursor does really well for, etc. So, similarly, I love to think of these tools, even if it's mobile, like it's a great starting place. And I think it's equally important to think to yourself, is the goal here an MVP or a prototype? Is it a finished product? Is it for a 200-person team? And understanding where these tools play a role. So, when I was at a bar a week and a half ago and we are, decided we wanted to build this mobile app, I did open Bolt. And, I kind of laughed. I was like, wow, this is so crazy. I just built a mobile app that could have taken me 9 months of a 100-person development team like I used to have. And I just built it sitting here. And, on the other hand, you might say, okay, I'm working on a giant, deal for a company. They want, a huge project. Maybe I'll go to Lovable or Bolt. I'll build them an MVP. I'll use that as a starting point, and then I'll go ahead and continue iterating, making it perfect, and taking the code. So I think it's really just understanding kind of the platforms, frameworks, and languages that you want to take on, and then understanding what tools are out there. And that doesn't just have to be the vibe coding tools we've talked about now. It could also be the N8N and the Zapiers of the world that could be behind the scenes, that could be building agents, that could be building serverless functions that can also empower many of these products. So yeah, I would say learn. Like it's fun. Like go to YouTube, see what people are doing. End up like I am, where my entire Instagram Reels feed is just people on N8N. And I think it's exciting for me. It's exciting for you guys. And so if there's any other questions, I'm sure we're happy to take them.
Maybe there's one thing that I think is often a little bit overlooked, and I just want to clarify this, because obviously we're very bullish on the capabilities of these tools. We're also very clear on the limitations, and there's lots of things that the tools cannot do yet, and that Lovable, for example, cannot do yet. And even though every month capabilities, massively improve, but we're not yet pushing for Lovable to be used for. You cannot build Salesforce in Lovable yet. You can build, and there was a question whether you can just build a website or a full app. You can build a full CRM, and we have customers who have done this for their SMB with a specific use case. But we use a lot of these tools in conjunction. And for example, we think that Lovable is the best tool to start an application. But a lot of our users, when they build something really complex, at some point they shift to Cursor, for example, to do more precision editing. And they use other tools like Midjourney for AI video generation that they include in their pages, and similar things. So yeah, just want to highlight that. All these tools are developing rapidly, and there's lots of things that they can do and lots of things that they cannot do, which is also why this is so important for users sometimes to get expert help, for people who understand the code and can help them get further. And that's why our users also interact with developers here and there. Super.
Amazing.
Cool. You're getting a taste of some live debugging here while you guys were speaking. So I added the capability to hopefully generate the content for a portfolio. So we'll see. Maybe we'll give this one last try here. There was some errors I was running into. And
your screen sharing stopped because it was pretty blurry. But yeah, I think happy to share maybe afterwards a link to the app very quickly, generate in 15 minutes here, to showcase what's possible in a very short amount of time. But I realized we're at time, so let's maybe follow up afterwards.
Yeah, no, and a huge thank you to Harper, Christian, Sebastian, kind of everyone who helped put this together. We definitely want to continue to hear from all of you. If you have ideas for Fiverr, if you have any issues, please reach out to your CSMs, myself. And we're definitely actively seeking freelancers who can continue to support these types of projects from idea to execution, and really, continue the wave of vibe coding. So if you can help bring their vision to life, if that's AI integrations, app debugging, polishing, or really anything else, I'm excited to see what you build. Genuinely, feel free to send it to me. I'm sure the Lovable team wants to see it too. Put it on LinkedIn. It's just really exciting to be able to take new ideas and bring them to life.